Welcome back to Super Sentai Reviews. This is episode number 6. And in this episode, we're going to talk about I want to be sure I bring up the document here. Talk about review for Mirai Sentai Timeranger. Yes, it's the Sentai that was used for Power Rangers Time Force. Now, of how much this is different from the actual Time Force people have seen. It's a bit more darker than that people take credit for. The rancid counterpart is the guy who was kind of like a little, kind of like a mutant with like bling on him. The guy who was kind of like a buffoon in Time Force. He's the main villain of Time Ranger. He is basically, they're not called mutants, they're basically gangsters. Yeah. And Nadira's counterpart pretty much wears the same exact outfit she does. She even has pink hair. And the only reason why she hangs out with the guy, like, they're not related per se. The only reason why they hang out together is because, well, she likes money. That's the reason why. Let's see here. Now, the guy who was the godfather of this thing, the guy who was counterpart as the buffoon, his name is Don De Niro. Yeah, he's the main villain of the whole thing. Gen, who is Power Ranger's counterpart, is a scientist. In Time Ranger, he is a poor kid who was good friends with Don De Niro, and he turned him into this robot because he suffered an accident. That's simply who he is. Leela is Nadira's counterpart, obviously, and Zents are the how should I put this? They're the ones who they're the ones that just do this. Yeah, they're the ones to do that with their arms. Yep, they pretty much serve the same function as they do from Time Force. They're created by the same person. Yeah, it's like his counterpart. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. Frax, that's his name, Frax. Frax's counterpart pretty much does the same thing. He does actually build these dang things, and they're made of junk. Yep. There are some differences per se. Like there was that one episode where the Pink Ranger was pointing a gun at one of the criminals, because in Power Rangers she was making fun of Alex. In Sentai, she was pointing a gun at him because he murdered her family. Yeah, and also I should point out in the Sentai, they actually show a lot more of the future in that one, and how the future works per se, and how the Rangers, how these people were recruited. Now, apparently, with the exception of the Pink Ranger, the other three were simply just students, and they were recruited because the Gennaro game basically, Don De Gennaro broke out of prison. As for who basically arranged that, that's not explained to almost like the second to last episode. Yeah. Now, Don De Gennaro, he actually does not die in the finale. He gets killed a few episodes before the actual finale, so he dies toward the end, but not the very last episode. Glenn, he actually dies in the last episode. Now, the finale is not that much different from Time Force. The only difference is that the captain, who his name is Captain Ryu, he's actually a villain. Yeah, he is a villain. He was also the original Time Fire, and he was Time Red. and he's the one who arranged everything that goes on. Now the Rangers themselves, now a lot of these names are pretty much the same as they are in Time Force. Like the Morphers are known as Chrono Chargers. Like they made very little changes when it comes to the name of the stuff. There's not really much difference when it comes to the V-Rex. Yeah, I think he's called slightly something different in Power Rangers. I'm not really sure what he's called, but yeah, some of the stuff they do keep pretty much the same. Like there's some villain, some of these persons they never actually showed on Time Force. Like there's one who was a serial child kidnapper, and there was also one who blew up 3 cities. Yeah, like some criminals, like some of these episodes, which are really dangerous for Fox. So I'm sure that the Fox executives probably had to watch the Sentai, and they probably saw how these villains acted. Some of them they did allow, but a lot of them they didn't because they thought they were too gruesome and too dark for children. So it is much darker Sentai. It's darker than Time Force. It's much darker. I mean, a lot of that stuff is not that much different from Time Force. It's like this one, they actually got pretty close to the original Sentai. There were some slight differences, like there were some criminals they include. Main villain basically was captured in the end in Time Force. In Timeranger, he died. But Leela was the only one that actually wasn't killed. She just disappeared. No one ever heard from her again. And that's never been followed upon. But yeah. Also, there is one change they did do from Timeranger to Time Force. The big change they did was that in Time Force, the Quantum Ranger, who is Time Fire in the Sentai footage, he survives. Time Fire gets killed by the bad guys. And apparently he's allied with trying to take... Apparently he's part of a plot to take over the Red Ranger's father's company. In Power Rangers, he has nothing to do with that. He wants to take over the Silver Guardians. In the show, in Time Ranger, the further was the City Guardians. Okay, then they serve pretty much the same function, the same uniforms too. Plus, also, I should point this out, Mr. Collins' Sentai counterpart. Let's see, what's his name? They do have him on here. The guy whose his name is. He's the father of the Red Ranger. Let's see here. He is Wataru Sami. Guy is a complete jerk. And he does become sympathetic until like almost the very end. Mr. Collins is pretty polite for what he is. And he's not much like a jerk like this guy is. I should point this out. The guy who played Mr. Collins, he passed away a few years ago. So I would love to meet the guy, but the only person I met who actually I kind of asked a question to from Time Force was the guy who played Wes Collins. Yeah, he also played Alex, but they're kind of like twins in a way. They kind of did the same thing with Time Force. So the plot line's very similar. Like they do explain some things a lot better, like why Tuck, who is Circuit in Time Force, they do explain why he's on the floor, because in Power Rangers, like, why is he on the floor for? I mean, a lot of people probably asked that question in part 2 of the premiere, and the reason why that is because the captain went back with them, though, was Leela the whole along. She was disguised as him, and she shot Tick, and Tick is a little more stubborn. He's not like happy-go-lucky. He's completely different in the Sentai. He's the one character that him and the other guy, Watari, those two characters, they did change a lot in Power Rangers. They changed them a lot. But they do actually show the Rangers actually going inside the actual Zords when they're in the future. They go to the past. In Time Force, they just, okay, take the Megazord, go back in time. Oh, and the captain dies. Yeah, he dies. And the theme song is very kind of somber-ish. And the show is like most of the Rangers basically just flowing through time. And one other change they did make, and this is kind of a big one, for the Blue Ranger. Now, most of the Rangers pretty much have the same function as they do in the Sentai footage, except for a couple of them. One, the Yellow Ranger, who is a woman in Power Rangers. In Sentai, he actually fell in love with a female photographer, who in Power Rangers was a male, because they switched up a bit. And at the end of the Sentai, he didn't know this until Gokaiger, because I watched Tribute. Tribute was really good. She had a son with him. Yeah, they had a son, which is something that happened. And the way they went Back to the Future is actually quite strange. It's drastically different how they returned Back to the Future and never came back in the Sentai footage. They just all said goodbye to the Red Ranger, which I think he kept this Chronomorpher. I think as far as I can tell, he did keep the Chrono Charger. Which, I should point out, how the morph sequence is done in Time Ranger is exactly the same as it is in Time Force. Now, Time Force is my favorite Power Ranger show because of how interesting it is. This one was still interesting. For what it is, it's a great show. I highly recommend it. I do not know when Shout Factory is going to do this one because it's going to be a little while before they do. But if you want to watch this, you gotta watch fan subs. Fan subs were actually pretty good. It took me a while to actually finish this one because some of them basically were there's no fan subs available. I should point out basically, like in case anybody asked me this, there was that one scene in one of the episodes for Time Force where the Red Ranger's visor where his eyes was smashed because he's trying to, and of course that's how his father, that's how Mr. Collins finds out that Wes is the Red Ranger. Same exact thing happens in Time Ranger. Same exact thing happens. Only that the Time Red's father is more upset about it than Mr. Collins is. But it's a great Sentai, and this is one particular Sentai I can definitely say they look pretty close. This one. The only difference is one big change they did make. There was a few big changes, but not really big ones. Like they changed it where instead of gangsters as mutants, red and blue were kind of changed. Green pretty much stayed the same, except that he's not an alien in Time Ranger. But a majority of it would pretty much stay the same. Plot lines pretty much kind of stay the same too, but it was somewhat different. But I should definitely point out this: it's darker than Time Force. It is darker, like I said. Now, how do I feel about it as stacks up to Time Force? It's just as good. I wouldn't say it's slightly better, but I would say it's just as good. And Jonathan Zacher did a great job with because after watching this Sentai, and of course this was after I had watched I watched Time Force first, then I watched the Sentai it's adapted from. You can definitely say that he paid a lot of respect to the Sentai. A lot of respect. I mean, yeah, there's some changes here and there. But there's a few big changes, but not really like big game-changing ones they had to change. But the only reason why I think that they created Ransik instead of using the other guy because they wanted to have a human villain. That's my personal guess. I don't know. But that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for episode 7, where I'm going to do Time Ranger versus Go 5. Which was the adaptation for Time of Light and Speed, though, and I'll tell how much different it is. This one, they did change a lot. Okay? But until then, I will see you there.